I like to think that we're part of a classless society, but the Australia Talk survey revealed that over 3/4 of us believe that the gap between rich and poor is too large. What implications does this have on the idea of Australia as a classless land of the fair go?
Anne-Ali, start with you.
Virginia, was it, or Eugenia?
Virginia.
Virginia, I'm sorry, Virginia. Thank you for that, Virginia. You know, I'll tell you a story. When my parents came to Australia 50 years ago, on June 9th, we celebrated 50 years in Australia. And my dad was an engineer in Egypt. And when he came to Australia, he couldn't work as an engineer. So he took a job on the factory floor, and then he took a job as a bus driver. And, you know, that was a real blow to my family because of the status of it, you know. And I remember growing up, my mum and my dad would always say, you know, in this country, we're all equal. In this country, the bus driver is the same as the engineer. Right? And that was their way of kind of saying, yeah, we had to make this sacrifice, but it's okay because in this country there's equality. And I guess that's kind of why I grew up thinking and believing, really, that equality and inequality in particular, was one of the things that we should all be fighting against. You know, the thing that 3/4 of people believe that the gap between the rich and poor and that gap is getting bigger, I think is really telling. And I think the first thing that we should be doing is raising Newstart. I think the fact that Newstart has been... The fact that Newstart has been kept so low has really contributed to that. Really contributed to that. And I think wage growth, slow wage growth, has also contributed to that. But they're not the only things. There are a whole range of other things, including the levels of household debt that we have. What I'm finding in Cowan, for example, is I'm really in touch with a lot of the not-for-profits and the charitable organisations, and they're telling me that there is unprecedented demand for their services, and it doesn't seem like it's going down. At one of those pantries had 6,000 boxes of food given to families in a single month. So I don't know that everyone realises just how tough it is out there for a lot of people and how much inequality is really biting. And when you have inequality, you also have a fractured society. It impacts on social harmony, it impacts on social cohesion, it impacts on the trust that we have between each other and in the institutions that govern us. And in every research that I've looked at, when you have an economy that is fractured, when you have more inequality, you have more social fracturing. And that's why we need to address this as a matter of urgency in Australia.
Yep. Hannah, what do you think?
Well, we have had this myth of, you know, the equal world. Aboriginal people certainly haven't subscribed to. When I grew up, we knew poverty, we knew homelessness, we knew police marching into people's homes. So I'm actually, in one sense, sort of happy that there's a dialogue about inequality happening, because we really need to do something about it. We need to increase our human rights culture in Australia. We have no Charter of Human Rights. And there was a crackdown on unions. Unions were big when I was a girl growing up, and workers had more rights than they seem to do now. So I hope this is an awakening that's happening, and that we can, you know, look at ways that wealth can be redistributed. There is obscene amounts of wealth and shocking amounts of poverty and suffering in Australia.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to a related question and then bring in the other panellists. A question from Alphonse Malumba.
Not all Australians share the benefit of prosperity. In some places like where I live in Balga, Mirrabooka, Nodamara, unemployment is close to 21%. Youth unemployment is rife, and many older Australians doubt they could find another job. In WA, high electricity bills have caused a surge in disconnections. So my question is this: can hard work really get you out of poverty?
Start with Dylan. It's been a big debate, this one, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's a really big question, and I think, you know, we have people that are really struggling out there. And again, coming off the point just earlier about wealth redistribution, is, you know, I don't think that anyone in this room at least, or around the world, can say that a billionaire in this country, such as Gina Rinehart, works any more harder than the single parent who's working 3 jobs to try and put food on the table. And I really think that, overall, we've just had more tax breaks get handed to those types of people and a little bit to other people in the middle class, but not a lot. And we're not seeing any of these flow-down benefits. Again, it comes back to the big picture. Australia is a very prosperous country. We need to take a good, long, hard look at ourselves. How are we treating people in this country? How are we treating people in this country? It's not fair.
Zach, the basic question, can hard work get you out of poverty?
I think it can. I think hard work and the opportunity to work, find a job and get up, it will. I have the personal experience myself, Alphonse, where my family's come from a very difficult background, a struggling background, and although I dropped out of uni, I was the first in my family to go to uni, and I'm a 32-year-old member of Parliament for the Liberal Party. I think that we're in the greatest state and the greatest country in the world, and I think it's only because of the opportunities that we have to work hard that we can get it going, and I think you can absolutely help get out of poverty and get in a situation where you can go on to achieve what you hope to.
So you just heard Anne Ali call for Newstart to be lifted. Well, so did John Howard, for that matter, and he's a ski-on of your party. So what do you think about that idea?
I think the Prime Minister's addressed that, and that's again goes to the importance of having a stronger economy.
Well, you address it by saying, no, we're not going to do it.
Look, it's about, well...
Without really explaining why.
It's making sure there's a strong economy and making sure there's jobs, and that's the most important thing, I think, is making sure you've got a job.
The Prime Minister says we live in a strong economy.
Yeah.
So why can't we raise the rate of Newstart
We
to
do
boost the...
Well, we do live in a strong economy. We do.
But raising the base of Newstart, that's going to go straight back into local jobs. It's going to go straight back into local business.
And I appreciate that point. I think having a strong economy, having lots of jobs available for people is what absolutely has a larger multiplier effect.
So, Zach, I know you may feel bound to follow what the Prime Minister says, but do you actually believe in it yourself? That's the big question.
Do I believe in having a strong economy?
No. Do you believe in not raising Newstart when people are suffering, when former Prime Minister John Howard says you should?
Look, I think it's something that they should look at as part of the overall scheme for social security. It's something that should be looked at in depth, but again, I would still revert to the point that I think government should help people get a hand up and not a handout, and that's absolutely what I believe in.
Okay. Hannah, sorry, you've got to let people have their opinions, folks, okay? Hannah.
So hard work and individual responsibility, personal responsibility, absolutely critical to success. I worked very hard through law school. I was homeless and out of education by 16, and fortunately there were special measures in Indigenous education. At the same time, there is structural inequality. There is wealth that is handed from generation that makes it really easier for certain wealthy sections of society. So we can't talk about hard work, personal responsibility without addressing structural inequality.
That's right.
Do you think this survey that we've just seen is sort of belling the cat on that issue? I mean, it's not something we talk about with figures around it. Now we can.
Yeah, it's giving a real voice to these issues. Very important.